Hello friends, this is a special episode of Yacht Delivery Chronicles. I was hired for a last minute delivery, flown up, and once we got to the boat, it wasn't as described and was non-operable, so we ended up, aborting the delivery mission for various reasons, which I'm going to get into today. I thought this would be interesting for anyone who is curious about yacht deliveries, getting involved in yacht deliveries, or maybe you're thinking about buying a boat and you want to have your yacht delivered, or just anyone who likes a story of wild stuff that did or could take place. So last Wednesday, I think it was, my good buddy Captain David Stovall, who we did that big delivery with from Seattle to Marina Del Rey, texted me and was like, hey, I gave your number to Captain Patrick Browne, who I actually had randomly met a couple days before in the park near here, because he has like a 1972 trawler a couple of marinas down. We had just randomly met in the park. And so Dave Stovall was like, hey, there's this delivery happening. Patrick's going to get in touch with you. So Patrick hit me up, called me, and was like, hey, there's this guy in San Francisco. He's buying this boat in Westport, Washington, which is like, I don't know, 2-hour drive west of Seattle to the sea. And he was like, the guy's chomping at the bit. He's like, wants to rush this delivery and get it done. And this was, I spoke with him on, I think, Wednesday night. And so then, and I was like, I'm free to do the delivery. I'm free to leave whenever, as long as like everything's on the up and up. And we agreed on my day rate, and went from there. He was like, okay, I'll call you tomorrow and let you know what's happening. So at the end of the day on Thursday, Captain Patrick contacted me and was like, okay, like everything's a go. They want us to fly out tomorrow morning to drive this boat from Westport, Washington to the San Francisco Bay. And I was like, okay, cool. Gave my info. They booked our tickets. We got up at like 4:30 in the morning, met at the airport, and we flew to Seattle. And as soon as we landed in Seattle, we found out that the fuel dock closed at 5 p.m. and wasn't open the rest of the weekend. And they were wanting us to leave like Friday night, which, there you go, Friday night. So we rented a car in Seattle, drove the two or 2.5 hours to Westport, nonstop, like trying to get there so that we could get the boat to the fuel dock. And the new owner had texted and said that the previous owner and the mechanic were there switching out, installing a new gasket on the coupler between the turbo and the exhaust. And that there was like, oh yeah, just switching out the gasket. That was part of the agreement on the sale. And I guess the sale was finalized Friday morning, and then we were supposed to show up Friday afternoon, and they wanted us to leave Friday night to push off for, I don't know. When I mapped it, outside the 3-mile circle, it was like, I don't know, 600 miles or something. So we book it, get to Westport, and right as we're pulling up to where all the boats are, we get a text that says they're waiting on a part for the engine. And so that's the first we had heard of anything about waiting on any parts. We were told the engine was running great and that everything was a go, and it passed the survey with flying colors and all this stuff. So, and we'd also, like, Patrick had only received like one photo of the boat at night, so we hadn't really seen photos of the boat. We didn't have all the details about the boat. So we pull up, park, and we go up to the boat, and we walk up, and there's a mechanic standing on the deck. And like, it was, Patrick hadn't even been given details about how big the boat was, or even, I didn't even tell him what year it was. It was like very sketchy on the details of the boat itself. So we showed up, and the boat was like 38 feet long, and wooden boat with a single screw, which means there's one engine. Most motor power boats have two engines, so there's two screws. So single screw, wooden boat, and it had been run as a fishing charter boat up in the Pacific Northwest. And there had been kind of details, like they said that, it hadn't been long since they had stopped running charters. It was what we were led to believe. And but so when we walk up, the mechanic's standing on the deck, and he is Captain Patrick said, "How's it going?" And he turned and looked at us and he said, "Not good for you guys." And that's kind of when everything started to become clear that not all was as we were led to believe with this boat. We got on board. It was a Caterpillar engine. I don't remember the model. And the mechanic showed us I don't know what the actual term for the part is. I'm going to call it a coupler, because it basically is like a piece of metal that's like a donut metal that bolts on to the turbo, and then it has a hose clamp that attaches it to like the exhaust elbow. And he shows it to us, and it's completely corroded. Like, it's gone. It's shot. And the mechanic showed me, he was like, okay, so the way it attaches to the engine, it had these weird kind of pyramid tabs with stainless bolts, and that kind of pinched it all the way around the flange and pressed it to the turbo. And then, like I said, there's just a hose clamp that hooked it to the exhaust, the actual exhaust. And he showed, and the greatest point of corrosion, he was like, that was the 6 o'clock position where all the salt water was just sitting, and it just corroded through. And then he showed me the gasket was a metal gasket with like a thin fiber adhered to it. That he was like, well, you see, it doesn't, like, this gasket does not mate to this coupling at all, which would explain why there had been leaking and corrosion. And then he showed me that it did fit into the turbo, so it was the correct gasket for the engine, but it did not match the coupler. And then I asked him, you could see, like, I think it was 6 holes in the coupler. I was like, well, what do those holes go to? And he was like, nothing on this engine, which means that someone had replaced the original with one off of another boat that didn't fit, and then they had done like a temporary fix with these weird tabs to just make it work, and which also likely meant that that gasket never had a good seal, which made it leak, which caused the corrosion, so on and so forth. The previous owner was there, and they're like, oh yeah, we just put in some calls, looking for this part. Now, it was Friday at like 4 p.m. in a very small town on the coast of Washington. And I knew inside, I was like, this part, obviously they took a part off another engine at some point, which means that there's no way you're not going to call a parts store and find this part. I don't think. Otherwise, it probably would have had the correct part on it in the first place. So the chances of them finding that part anytime soon seem very slim to me. And especially with the weekend and everything. So, and as we did further investigation of the boat, there was no working galley. Like, the stove was very rusted. The sleeping quarters, I couldn't quite tell if they had cushions or not, but there were like 4 berths that look like they might just be wood, but they may have had cushions. I couldn't tell. There were no settees or anything to sit on in the saloon. No table or anything, because it was a fishing charter, so it was kind of bare bones. We had been told that it had perfectly working autopilot, and it had radar or whatever, but we weren't sure if the radar worked. But we were told the autopilot worked, no problem. Looking at the switch panel and everything and every other system on that boat, I could assure you that autopilot likely did not work. And the other thing was, the helm was a stand-up helm, so there was no place to sit So, you know, the likelihood of us getting stuck hand steering was high, and you would have to stand up your entire watch with nothing to lean against or brace yourself on and drive that boat, you know, 500 or 600 miles to the San Francisco Bay. And then I went up on the flybridge because it was a 6-man life raft up there, and it had expired I think in February of 2018. And went back down and climbed down into the bilge and like looked at the engine, and I could see like 2 inches of standing black oil in the bilge, and like an oil filter floating in it, which is, you know, that's a bad scene. And I climbed out, and then Captain Patrick went down and looked at everything, and he checked the oil, and the new oil was perfectly clear, you know, because they changed the oil. So that's also like kind of a telltale. It's like, if it's brand new oil in it, that's good for the passage, but you don't know what it actually looked like, you know. So these are all like massive red flags going off. But my biggest concern the whole time, oh, and that's the other thing, when Captain Patrick was climbing out of the bilge, I saw him grab the tag on the fire extinguisher, and it expired in 2017. Which tells us that they have not been running charters since 2017. And that led to my greatest concern kind of the whole scenario, was that that boat has been sitting since 2017, and that a great deal of sludge has built up in those diesel tanks. And once you take that out into the open ocean, even if you're staying close in, like getting tossed around, and it's a pretty small boat considering, you know, it churns up all of that stuff, and you're just like, your engine's dying constantly because the fuel filters are getting clogged one after another. And we've been told there were plenty of fuel filter spares, so I asked the owner, I was like, yeah, do you have fuel filter spares on the boat? And he's like, yeah, there's a set of spares. So there was only one fuel filter spare for each of the 2 fuel filters on the boat, for the primary and secondary fuel filters. And so at that point I was like, you know, I wasn't really interested in sitting out bobbing for 12 hours and waiting for a sea tow, which is likely what would have happened to us, even if they had the coupler working. Like, thankfully they did actually change that gasket and found that the part had failed, because it could have been they were like, oh yeah, we changed it, and at least they were honest about that. And then we get out there, and then, you know, we would not have gotten very far with the boat in that condition, I don't think. So I mean, I'm thankful that that mechanic was honest and was like, look, this is what's up. So that's great. But you know, it seemed like the new owner was just like excited about getting the boat. I guess he's had increased success with a smaller boat chartering fishing trips in the San Francisco Bay, and so he bought this boat to try to, you know, take his business to the next level. But you know, sometimes when you get a bargain deal on a boat that's bigger than maybe you can afford, it turns out you still can't afford that size boat because it comes with a whole nother set of problems. And you know, that boat, it's good bones. I think that it'll totally, it will take some work to get up and running, but nothing crazy. So, but the reality is you can't just push out for an ocean passage in a boat in that condition and expect that everything's going to be okay. Especially not that far, you know. Had it been, if we were just going to Astoria, which is like pretty close, then it'd been like, yeah, we could probably limp it down there. Or just hop port to port. But covering that kind of ground in a boat in that condition was completely unrealistic. So after we looked over everything, me and Patrick hadn't eaten at all the whole day. So we're like, okay, we're going to go eat some food. And we were just like laughing about the whole thing because we were like, okay, well, you know, we got up the sidewalk and he was like, what's your take on this whole thing? And I was like, well, I'm happy to sit here till Monday and see if they sort it out. But with everything else happening with that boat, it is highly unlikely to me that that boat is going anywhere. You know, that's my perspective. And he was the captain. It was his delivery, and he had hired me as crew. So I'm down for silliness. Like, as long as there were life jackets on board, and I believe that 6-man life raft would have worked even if it was expired, you know. But you know, I'm down for adventures. So I would have gone along with it even if, you know, crazy stuff would have happened. If the captain had made that call and been like, okay, well, let's do it. But I mean, for us, it's like the engine didn't even run, so there was no way we could leave. So he called the the new owner, and the first thing he asked the new owner was like, "Did you come see this boat?" And I could hear the dude laughing on the phone. So the new owner understood like the condition, you know what I mean? And I don't think he wasn't trying to be sneaky. It didn't seem like, from what I understand, that he was trying to put us in a bad position or anything. I think he was just excited about trying to get the boat down there and get it running, you know, and which we can all understand that. Sometimes we'll overlook a lot of problems because we get excited and high about the, you know, being able to see like the possibility of what's happening with what eventually the boat will be in, condition it'll be in, and what you can do with it. Yeah, and Captain Patrick was like, you know, he's like, we can sit here and like run up the bill, but you know, come next week you might still have to just fly us home. And for anyone who doesn't understand how deliveries work, basically it's like the new owner pays for all the travel expenses and to and from the boat, delivery, and you know, when you get to wherever, then they were going to fly us back from San Francisco back to Los Angeles. They pay for an agreed upon day rate for one day rate for the captain, and then a different day rate for the crew. And usually when there's like lay days or weather layovers, like if there's a day where you're just sitting, you're not driving the boat and you're not working in the boat, you're not wrenching anything, you're just sitting because you're waiting for weather, then you get a half rate. So you get half of your agreed upon rate for those days for both captain and crew. And then they also pay for provisions and all the fuel and all that stuff. And basically it's like the captain will lay out what he thinks it's going to cost roughly, and then the new owner will put down a deposit which is 50% of the estimated final delivery cost. And then the final delivery cost, you know, obviously depending on fuel consumption and any, you know, sometimes you get stuck in a port for like 4 days waiting for weather, and so that would add up to a greater expense than what was initially worked into the estimate. So Captain Patrick was like, you know, we could sit here and like rack up our half days, but you know, it's your call, it's your money, I'm not gonna tell you what to do, it's your money. So, and the guy was like, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. He was like, it's Friday and who knows when they're gonna find that part, and there's nothing happening the whole weekend, so yeah, you guys, we'll just fly you home and try to figure out what's happening with the boat. Patrick told him, he was like, look, my advice to you is to find someone you trust to come up here and get this boat dialed in and do sea trials around the area, take it out to sea, you know, work out all the kinks so that you know that this boat is seaworthy and is going to make like a 500-mile, 600-mile passage. And then you can contact us and fly us back up, and we'll drive the boat to San Francisco for you. And, you know, even if they were like, got it working and then hop down a couple of ports just to see how it did out in the ocean, that'll give everyone confidence that the boat will actually make it to San Francisco. The other option is to put it on a trailer and drive it to San Francisco. But with it being a wooden hull, I'm not sure if that would compromise the hull on a trailer because the weight and the age and who knows. So so yeah, so that's where we stood. And the new owner was like, okay, well, yeah, we'll book you guys a ticket home. So then we tooled around Westport, checked out. We got to see the molds for like the Westport, which we believe are the Westport boats, which were originally made in the town of Westport, Washington. We found these massive molds for ship making, which was really cool to see. And checked out the beaches, which are gorgeous. And then we decided to drive to Aberdeen to spend the night and stayed in a hotel there. And then got up the next morning, early and drove up into the rainforest and did a hike and just saw what we could in the short time we had left. We were flying out of Seattle at 4 p.m., so we knew we needed to be back in Seattle by 2 p.m. So we just popped over to the rainforest and then drove straight to Seattle airport and then flew home. So it was a quick and kind of wild trip, kind of a surreal 48 hours. Captain Patrick Browne is super cool guy, and you'll be seeing him on our channel, I'm sure. He, like I said, he has a trawler just up the way from us, and good energy, happy dude. He's been driving boats a long time, and look forward to checking out his boat, and look forward to giving Captain Dave Stovall a hard time for throwing us into the chaos. But yeah, it all turned out as a good learning lesson for, you know, things to like look for, things that and kind of assess like what's a no-go when you get to a boat that you're hired to deliver. Luckily, this owner was on the up and up and didn't, like, you know, he lost a lot of money flying us up there, putting us up, and then flying us back and not getting anything accomplished. So we felt bad for him, but that's, you know, this is what we do to make money, to survive. So it's like, you know, our time is our time, and we're not in the charity business, so, you know, that's part of the bargain. So if you are buying a boat and looking at a delivery crew, make sure that your boat is actually seaworthy. The other thing is, like, make sure you get someone to do a survey. You hire the surveyor, and don't let the broker hire the surveyor, because that can be a conflict of interest. You know, you have to know that your boat is going to get there, and not just for the delivery crew's sake, but so that your boat actually doesn't, you know, end up being lost at sea, because that could have been a possibility with that boat, you know. So that is the Yacht Delivery Chronicles episode for this week. And I hope it was informative for anybody out there interested in this subject. And if you have any further questions about the whole thing, hit me up in the comments down below. And give us a like, and subscribe if you like our channel. I want to thank our patrons for keeping us afloat during this crazy time. And yeah, wild times. So thanks for watching, and fair winds until next time.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like, subscribe, and leave us a comment. It helps us a lot.
Thanks again to all of our patrons. Your contributions help us get the boat ready for big things.
Until next time.